here at Upad Towers in northwest London, and with James of Upad I've been creating some videos about how to get the most out of your online marketing. And James, I thought for this video we could move on to the next stage, which is actually turning a viewing into a tenancy. We've gone to all the trouble of marketing our properties, we've got the inquiries coming in, hopefully, if you've been following our tips. But then we've got the viewing to consider, and landlords should actually plan for that and make sure that they optimise it. I think let's touch again on open house days. I'm a big fan of those. What are your tips for open house?
So this is in a nutshell. We actually do a whole webinar on this that people can find out from our homepage about it. But I think in essence, get to the property before the viewing time is, just to make sure that you can open up. There's nothing worse than when the keys don't work or you bought the wrong ones. Make sure the property looks presentable when you go in there. Maybe you need to tidy up. I'm also a fan, prior to organising a viewing, of maybe incentivising your existing tenants, if you have sitting tenants, to make the property look presentable. Maybe pay for a cleaner to go around for a couple of hours every week whilst you're in that 3-4 week period of looking for new tenants. Because first impressions count. There's so much where as soon as somebody walks through the door, the first few seconds, they're actually making a decision on whether it's right for them. Yeah. And if it's just dark, you can't open the front door, it's cold, there's tenants' belongings all over the place, you're blowing that opportunity crudely. Moving on, buy a notebook, put it on your Christmas list from Santa. And the reason being is that when tenants are calling you to organise a viewing and on the viewings, some of the questions you should ask, like open-ended questions of when are you looking to move, why do you like this area, what would your existing landlord say about you, have you lived with these other tenants before? It's very easy to get confused between what Paul, Jack and Jill have said when you get back to your home and one of them puts an offer on your property, and trying to remember who said what and who you thought was the good tenant rather than just somebody who's willing to pay the market rate for it all. So make sure you have a notebook so that when you're speaking to your tenants over the phone and on the viewing, you can just make notes about what their responses have been and your gut feel factor. Even if you do it while you're sitting in the car before going home. But it's really, really important because it's so easy to get confused. And the reason this is important is twofold. Doing a viewing is really important to do yourself because 9 out of 10 tenants would rather meet the landlord than an agent on a viewing. So you're putting yourself in pole position and you need to sell the property and make it presentable when the tenants come round. But maybe more importantly, it's for you to get a gut feel factor about your potential tenants. Yep. And of the 5 or 10 that have come round for a viewing, make sure you understand who is the good guy and who actually you wouldn't want to let to because you haven't got a good vibe from them, by making notes about each of them. And actually who you let your property to actually comes down to who you think is the good guy rather than who's offering the most amount of rent. I think I'd be far more focused about who's going to look after this property as a home. They've lived with the other tenants before, so you're not going to have arguments and one walks out and then they can't pay the rent. If they've lived previously together for 3 years in the same property, they're all good signs. And I'm far more encouraged by letting a property to somebody like that than maybe whoever's offering £25 more per week, for example. I think that can actually work against you. So just make sure you use the viewing for your advantage and also from the tenant's advantage by selling the property and make it look presentable rather than a cold, dark, messy property that is not going to be appealing.
No, I think it's very, very good tips. And on Property Tribes, we have a thread that actually lists the questions that every landlord should ask prospective tenants. So I will put a link to that below this video. We talked also previously about sending a text message just before, about an hour before the viewing, to make sure that they turn up. And I think, you know, if a tenant turns up late or they don't really ask many questions, I would think, oh, well, are they serious?
100%. That gut feel factor, getting that vibe from somebody, you know, if they're 5 minutes late, it's fine. Yeah. Or if they were in a meeting at work, that's fine. But actually, the second somebody's 20 minutes late or they've started to get lost, you know, really, do I want this person moving into my property if they can't do the 5-minute walk to the from the tube station to your property?
Yeah, or even just phone you to say I'm going to be a bit
100%.
late. Yeah.
You know, it rings an alarm bell in my mind about where the future would go. But also, after the viewing, follow up with them. You know, it's really important to get feedback about what they liked about the property, what they didn't. And actually, what they didn't like is probably more important so that you know how to work on that next time round. And it can help you because the less viewings we do and the faster we can let it, it's a tick box for every single landlord out there. So if they're saying, oh, it was a bit too far from the station, well, you can't really move your property. But if it was the fact that the bathroom looked messy, or it was cold, or whatever, it's something that you can physically change, it will give you a steer on how you can make small amendments to get it let faster, to do less viewings, probably at a higher rent, and help you down the line. But yes, do the bit beforehand of just confirming our appointment for 12 o'clock, and do the bit afterwards from a feedback perspective about what they liked and they didn't like, and then act on that as well, rather than just filing it away. Most tenants are seeing 3 or 4 properties, for example. So when they're coming around your property, if you're doing a block viewing or an open house, if there's a few other tenants coming around at the same time, there becomes a bit of a buzz. And they're therefore more likely to move to the next stage of putting an offer in than just sitting on the fence and maybe seeing 2 or 3 other properties. They might actually just make a decision there and then. So it helps that process and turning someone from a prospect to an actual offer for your property. And also it's your time, exactly as you mentioned, Vanessa. It's good to do viewings, it's very important to do viewings, but I don't want to be doing them every single night of the week. And I think there's many reasons why block viewings are the way forward. I actually can't see any negatives from doing that, both from the tenant's perspective and creating more demand, and also your time factor that also it represents.
Well, fantastic tips there, James. Thank you very much for sharing them. And do check out the Technology Tribe, where we've shared lots of information about making the most of the online portals. So do go along to Technology Tribe. More from Upad later.